I never thought the day would come when I would be afraid of silence. Not the silence of the night that I always liked, but the silence of the telephone, the silence of the door that doesn't close, the silence of the table set just for me. I'm 77 years old, and it's not my age that hurts. I know my body isn't the same anymore, that my skin tells stories I didn't ask it to tell, that my hands tremble when I hold my coffee cup. But this I accept. Time passes for everyone. That's not what I'm afraid of. What really hurts is realizing that you've become invisible to the people you love most. I raised 3 children. 3. I gave them everything I had, and even what I didn't have. I worked as a domestic worker my whole life so they could study, so they could have clean clothes, so there would never be a lack of food on the table. My husband died when the youngest was only 8 years old, and I carried on alone, because that's what a mother does, isn't it? We carry on. They grew up, they graduated, they got married, they had children, and I was happy, very happy, because that's what I wanted, wasn't it? To see them doing well, far from the difficulties I went through. But something changed, not suddenly. It happened slowly, so slowly that I didn't even realize when it started. The visits became less frequent, the phone calls shorter, the excuses more frequent. Mom, I'm in a rush today. Mom, the kids have schoolwork. Mom, we'll talk next week, and next week would turn into a month, and that month would turn into 2. Before we continue, if you've ever felt this kind of loneliness, if you've ever wondered why the people you love most seem to see you less, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be notified whenever a new story about new beginnings, overcoming challenges, and unexpected discoveries is shared here. Because sometimes hearing the story of someone who has gone through what you're going through is what we need most to realize we're not alone. At first, I tried to understand. They have their lives. I thought, work, children, commitments. I can't be selfish. I can't demand attention. I can't be a burden. So I would stay quiet, waiting, always waiting. I remember my 75th birthday. I bought a small cake, tidied the house, put the pretty tablecloth on the table, the one I saved for special occasions. I called the 3 of them to let them know I was going to make a simple lunch, nothing fancy, just so we could see each other. Everyone confirmed it. I was so happy I didn't sleep well the night before. I prepared everything with care. I made the chicken they liked, the farfalle my mother taught me, the mayonnaise salad. I put flowers on the table. I looked at the clock every 5 minutes. Noon, nobody. 1 hour, nobody. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was the oldest. Mom, I'm sorry, something unexpected came up. We won't be able to go. But congratulations. Okay. You know we love you. I hung up. I sat in the chair. I looked at the neatly set table, at the cake with the candles still unlit, and I cried, alone in my house, on my birthday. I ate a piece of cold chicken later, when it was already dark, not because I was hungry, but because it seemed wrong to let everything spoil. I remember wondering that night, what did I do wrong? Was I a bad mother? Did I demand too much? Did I not know how to love properly? I didn't find an answer. I only found a very large emptiness inside me. After that day, I started to notice a pattern. They only showed up when they needed something. Money, most of the time. Or to leave their grandchildren here while they sorted out some problem. I always helped, always, even when it hurt. Even when I knew, deep down, that I wasn't a priority. I was a resource. My house became too small for me. Each room seemed to scream of someone's absence. I would spend hours sitting on the porch, just watching the street, watching people go by, watching families walking together, and feeling completely alone amid so much life around me. I started talking to myself, not because I'd lost my mind, but because if I didn't talk, I wouldn't hear any human voices all day, not even my own. One day, I called my middle son just to hear his voice. I didn't need anything. I just wanted to talk. He answered hurriedly. "Hi, Mom. Is everything all right?" "Okay, son. I just wanted to know about you. Everything's fine here. Look, I'm stuck in traffic right now. We can talk more later, okay?" "Yes, son." He hung up, and I stood there, holding the phone, waiting for him to call back. He never called. I began to realize that, for them, I only existed when it was convenient, when I could solve something, when I had something to offer. Apart from that, I was just another obligation they had to fit into their schedule. And, most of the time, not even that. There was a moment, a few months after that birthday, when I felt something inside me had broken. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an explosion. It was just exhaustion. A deep exhaustion from waiting, from giving myself, from begging for crumbs of attention. I started to wonder, what will become of me? Am I going to die like this? Alone? Forgotten? When I'm gone, will they feel it? Or will they only worry about what I've left behind? Because, yes, I had something. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The house. Some savings. Things I'd accumulated my whole life. And that's when I started noticing something different. Something that sent a chill down my spine. They started asking about these things. Discreetly, at first. "Mom, have you thought about making a will?" "Mom, this house is too big for you. Have you thought about selling it?" I pretended not to understand. But I did understand perfectly. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about what I had. And it was at that moment that I realized I was no longer a mother. I was an inheritance. I've never been one to hold grudges. I've always tried to see the good in people, even when there wasn't any good to see. But sometimes you can't pretend you don't see the obvious anymore. It was on a Sunday afternoon that everything became very clear to me. My oldest daughter, Mariana, came to visit me, alone, a rare occurrence. She brought a cake from the bakery and made coffee. She was being overly kind, strangely kind. We talked about pleasantries, the weather, the grandchildren, the soap opera. And then she brought up the subject. "Mom, I was thinking, don't you think this house is getting dangerous? The stairs, those steps at the entrance, the bathroom without handrails. What if you fall?" I looked at her. "I've lived here 42 years. Daughter, I've never fallen. I know, Mom, but as we get older, we have to be prepared, right? Your siblings and I were talking. We think maybe it would be better if you sold this house and moved to a smaller apartment. More practical, safer, easier to divide later, I thought. But I didn't say anything." Or, she continued, "you could come live with one of us. We can take turns. A few months at my house, a few months at Roberto's, a few months at Junior's." I stayed quiet for a while. I took a sip of my coffee. I looked at her, and what do I do with my things? With the memories of your father, with the life I've built here. She gave a weak smile. "We keep what's important. Mom, the rest." You yourself always said it's just stuff, right? Ting. My whole life was just things. I'll think about it, I replied. She didn't insist any more that day, but I knew she would bring it up again. And I knew her brothers would start pressuring her to. In the following days, that's exactly what happened. Roberto called, extremely worried about my safety. Junior showed up, here with some papers from a real estate agency, just to take a look. Mom, no strings attached. They were coordinating it. They were coordinating amongst themselves. And there I was, in the middle of it all, like a problem to be solved. I started to feel cornered inside my own home. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, how did I end up here? How did I become a burden to them? How did the love I gave my whole life turn into this? I remember one particular night, 3 in the morning. I was sitting in the kitchen, in the dark, just looking out the window, and then a memory came to me. The day Mariana was born. She was so small, so fragile. I spent hours looking at her, in her crib, afraid that something would happen, promising myself that I would protect that little creature from everything, that I would give her everything I didn't have, and I gave. I gave everything, but now I was the one who was vulnerable, and there was no one looking out for me, no one promising to protect me. I cried that night. I cried a lot. A silent cry, the kind that hurts in your chest, that takes your breath away. And one day, broke, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I wasn't going to beg for attention anymore. I wasn't going to pretend to be small anymore, to fit into their lives. If they wanted the house, the money, the things, let them have it all. But I wasn't going to live like that anymore. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my days feeling like a burden. I had to change something, urgently. I didn't know exactly what or how, but something inside me had broken completely. And, strangely, in the midst of all that pain, something different was born. A revolt. Not a noisy revolt, one that shouts and rages, but a cold revolt, silent, determined. I started to see everything with different eyes. Every phone call, every visit, every gesture. I realized that when I was feeling down, when I really needed help, nobody showed up. But when I said I had something to give, that I was going to make lunch, that I needed help organizing some paperwork around the house, then yes, they found the time. It was Roberto who called me the following week. He almost never called. Mom, how are things? Is everything all right there? Okay, son, have you thought about what we talked about? About the house? That's it. That's all. I've already thought about it. Silence on the other end. Expectation. So, Mom, what did you decide? I've decided I'm going to stay in my house as long as I can. As long as I have the strength. This house is mine, and I'm not leaving. He was embarrassed. Oh, okay, Mom. We were just worried. That's all. I know, son. I know. I hung up, and I felt something strange. It wasn't exactly relief, but it was firmness time, premier décennaux. In the following weeks, the visits decreased even further. I knew they were upset, not by my decision itself, but because it interfered with their plans. And me, I started living differently. It wasn't a grand change. There was nothing spectacular about it, but it was different. I started doing things my way, without worrying about whether they would like it or not, without waiting for approval, without waiting for a visit. I started tidying up the garden. I planted new flowers. I painted the front fence. Small things, but they made me feel alive. I started going out more. not to fox to say people, to sit in the square, to have coffee at the bakery. And the more I did that, the more I realized one thing. I had spent entire years waiting for them to see me, waiting for them to call, waiting for them to care. And while I waited, I had stopped living. I had placed my entire existence in their hands. All my joy depended on a visit, a phone call, a gesture of affection. And they had complete power over me, because I had given them that power. It was around this time that something strange began to happen. Première me donna Célia from mine. We always greeted each other from a distance, but we had never really talked. One day, I was watering the plants when she walked by. What a beautiful garden, ma'am. Francisca, I replied. But you can call me Chica. Mrs. Chica, I'm Celia. I live downstairs. We stayed there talking on the sidewalk. About plants, about the neighborhood, about nothing and about everything. When I realized it, more than an hour had passed. She invited me for coffee at her house the next day. And I went. Celia's house was cozy, full of life, full of stories. We talked all afternoon. She told me about her life, and I told her about mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was really listening to me. Not to answer, not to judge, not to ask for anything. Just listening. When I got home that night, I felt different, lighter. I started going to Celia's house, and she to mine. We would knit together, watch soap operas, complain about life, laugh at silly things. And that's how, slowly, I began to realize something I had never noticed before. While I was desperate, asking for attention, begging for love, nothing came. But when I stopped waiting, when I started living my life my way, when I turned my back on that pain and decided to move on anyway, things started to change. Not in the way I expected. Not with my children knocking on the door, begging for forgiveness. But they started to change. I've never been one to believe in coincidence. My mother always said that everything in life happens for a reason, even when we don't understand it at the time. I grew up hearing that, but I confess that, for a long time, I thought it was just her way of making sense of suffering. But something started happening that made me rethink things. After I met Celia, other people started appearing in my life, not in a forced way, but naturally, as if they had always been there, just waiting for me to open my eyes. There was Donna Irene from the house on the corner, a widow too. We used to meet at the market and started going shopping together. She taught me how to haggle, how to choose the best vegetables. We laughed a lot. There was Mr. Osvaldo, the neighbor next door. He always offered to help when he saw me carrying something. At first I refused, out of embarrassment. Then I accepted. And I discovered that he liked feeling useful as much as I did. One afternoon, Celia invited me to a craft meeting at church. I'd never been to anything like that before. I always thought it wasn't for me, but I went. And when I got there, I saw a lot of women my age, talking, laughing, crocheting, embroidering, painting on fabric, some more skilled, others not so much, but all of them there, together, sharing. I felt welcomed in a way I hadn't felt in years. One of them, Nusa, taught me a crochet stitch that I had never been able to learn. She was patient with me, repeating the stitch about 5 times until I got the hang of it. When I succeeded, she clapped. "See, Chica, you can do it." And I laughed. I really laughed, in that good, hearty way that makes your stomach hurt. I started going every week, and each week I felt more alive, more présent. Meanwhile, my children remained distant. Phone calls were rare, visits even more so. But I realized that it no longer consumed me as it once did. I no longer waited for the phone to ring. I no longer counted the days since the last visit. I no longer wondered what I had done wrong. I had other things to think about, other places to be, other people who made me feel important. And it was precisely when I stopped waiting for them that something strange happened. Mariana showed up here on a Saturday morning. Without warning, she knocked on the door, and when I opened it, she was holding a bag of bread and had a somewhat awkward smile. "Hi, Mom. I was passing by and decided to stop by. I brought some warm French bread. I was surprised, but I let her in. We had coffee together. She stayed longer than I expected. We talked about silly things, about her grandchildren, about her life. And at the end, when she was already leaving, she said something that caught my attention. 'You look different, Mom.' 'Different how?' I asked. I don't know how to explain it. More light, happier, perhaps. I didn't answer anything. Premier just smiled after thinking about it. Was I different? Was I happier? I hadn't realized it. But maybe I had. Maybe I really had changed something. And it was later, Junior Khaled. Not to talk about the house, the will, or anything like that. He called to ask if I wanted to have lunch with him and his family on Sunday. I almost couldn't believe it. Of course. "Son, I will go." And I went. Lunch was normal, nothing extraordinary. But it was nice. The grandchildren played with me. My daughter-in-law was kind, and Junior was more present than usual. Finally, when he brought me back home, he said, "Mom, I'm sorry we've been so distant. Life has been too hectic. But I'll try to come more often." I could have said a lot of things. I could have confronted him, complained, thrown everything I had felt in his face. But I just said, "I know, son. I understand. It's funny." This time I really understood. Not in a resigned, complacent way, but in a light way. As if it no longer had the power to destroy me, because I no longer depended on that to be happy. I had my life, small, simple, but mine. And the more I lived like that, the better things seemed to flow. Roberto, who was the most distant of them all, showed up here on a rainy day. He said he was worried about whether I had food at home, if everything was okay with the electricity, with the roof. I was happy with the visit, but I wasn't devastated when he left. It was as if, somehow, I had found a balance. One day, while talking to Celia, I mentioned this. "You know, Celia, it's funny. When I was desperate for attention, nobody showed up. Now that I'm not expecting it anymore, they're starting to come." She looked at me with that look of hers, half wise, half amused. "Chica, people can sense when we need them too much. And sometimes that's scary. It feels like a burden. It feels like an obligation. But when we're whole, even when we're alone, that's when people approach us in a different way. Lighter, more genuine." I kept thinking about that for days. Could that be it? Could it be that somehow my despair was driving people away, and my peace was attracting them? It didn't make much logical sense. But in practice, that's exactly what was happening. The more I filled my time with other things, with other people, with my own company, the closer my children seemed to get. Not in an intense way, not in a way that would erase everything that had happened, but in a present way, real. One day Mariana invited me to go to the salon with her, to get our nails and hair done, to spend the afternoon together. I went, and it was good. She told me things I didn't know about her life, about her marriage, her work, the difficulties she faced with her children. And I realized that she also needed someone to listen, not someone to judge, not someone to solve, just someone to listen. And I heard it, for real. Late in the afternoon, as we were leaving, she gave me a tight hug. Thank you, Mom. Why, daughter, because I'm here. Because I'm you. I didn't cry there. But when I got home, alone, sitting on the sofa, the tears came. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of something that had healed without me even realizing it. But life, I was about to discover, still had much more to show me. Because in the midst of all this change, all this new lightness, something unexpected happened. And this thing was going to change everything again. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was at Celia's house, having tea, when she told me about a group that met every week at the municipal library. A reading group for senior citizens. Chica, you have to come with me. It's so much fun. We'll read books, talk about them, discover new stories. You'll love it. I hesitated. I've never been much of a reader. In fact, since I left school at 14 to work, I'd hardly read a single book. But something made me say yes. And it was in that group that I met Dolores. Dolores was different from all of us. She was 79 years old, but she seemed to have the energy of someone who was 40. Short, neatly cut hair, colorful clothes, a wide smile. She spoke about books with a passion I had never seen before. She quoted passages from memory, discussed characters as if they were real people, and asked questions that made you think. I was fascinated. After the meeting, I approached her. Dolores, I loved listening to you speak. She smiled. And I loved seeing you listening so attentively. Darling, what's your name? Francisca. But you can call me Chica. Girl, what a cute name. We talked a little more. And in the end, she gave me a book. Here, read this one. I think you'll like it. It was a thin book with a simple cover. The tidings, premier tout qui t'emmène at night store reading. And as I was reading, something inside me began to stir. It was as if those words had been written for me. As if someone, somewhere, knew exactly what I was feeling. I finished the book in 2 days. And when I finished, I was sure of one thing. I wasn't the same person I was a few months ago. Something had changed profoundly within me. And the strangest thing was, life around me had changed too. Not in a magical way, not in a spectacular way, but it had changed. And I still had no idea what was coming next. Dolores became a constant presence in my life. Every week, in the reading group, we would talk. And after the group, we would stay a little longer, just the two of us, talking about life. She had an interesting story. She had been a literature teacher her whole life. She never married, never had children. She traveled to many places, met many people, and read thousands of books. Chica, she once told me, I chose to live this way, and I don't regret anything. But you know what I've learned? That life always gives us exactly what we're ready to receive. No more, no less. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but that phrase kept echoing in my head. Life gives us what we are ready to receive. Was that why, when I was broken and desperate, nothing good came my way? And now that I was more whole, things started to flow better. It wasn't that I had become a different person. I was still me. I still had my fears, my insecurities, my pain. But something inside me had reorganized itself. I had found a place of peace. A place that didn't depend on anyone to exist. And the more I settled into that place, the more life seemed to respond in a different way. It was around that time that something happened that really affected me. My son Roberto called me on a Sunday afternoon. He said he needed to talk to me in person. My heart sank. Whenever someone says I need to talk, we immediately imagine the worst, right? He came the next day. He sat in the living room, somewhat awkwardly, staring at the floor. Mom, I need to apologize to you. I stayed quiet, waiting. I know we abandoned you. I know we only showed up when we needed something. I know you suffered a lot because of that, and I'm so sorry. Truly, he was emotional. His eyes were shining, filled with tears he knew he'd been trying to contain. I've been going through some problems recently, serious problems, and that's when I realized that I was doing to you exactly what I didn't want done to me. I was treating you like you were a burden, like you were just someone who's there, and that's it. He wiped his face with his hand. And when I found myself alone, needing someone, and there was no one, I thought of you. I thought of how many times you must have felt like that. And I felt like trash, Mom. Absolutely like trash. I approached him. I held his hand. Roberto, son, everything's fine. No, Mom, it's not okay. We hurt you. I hurt you. Yes, it hurt. I'm not going to lie. It hurt in a way that I thought I wouldn't survive. But look at me now. I survived. And more than that, I lived. He looked at me, confused. I learned that I can't depend solely on you to be happy. That I can't put my entire life in anyone's hands, not even my children's. Because you have your own lives. And that's okay. I don't hold grudges. I did for a while, yes. But it's over. How, Mom? How did you manage that? I thought for a while before answering. I stopped waiting. I stopped looking at what I didn't have and started looking at what I did have. I started truly living. And then, when I least expected it, you all started coming back. In a different way, in a more genuine way. He just stared at me, processing it. I want to be a part of your life again, Mom. For real this time. You've always been a part of it, son. But now, you're here in a way that matters. And that makes all the difference. We hugged. And in that hug, I felt that something had healed between us. It wasn't everything. It didn't erase what had happened. But it was a start. A real start. After I left, sat on the porch, the setting painting in pink. And I thought about everything that had happened in the last few months. Something inside me had changed. I had stopped clinging, suffocating, and desperately waiting, and life had answered. It hadn't been magic. It hadn't been quick, but it had happened. And I realized that this was no coincidence. Whenever I looked back, whenever I remembered how I was before and how I was now, it became clear. When I was in a state of neediness, despair, and constant pain, things only got worse. People distanced themselves. Everything seemed heavy, difficult, impossible. But when I changed my inner state, when I found peace within myself, even though nothing had changed on the outside yet, things began to reorganize themselves. People started to get closer. Opportunities appeared. Life began to flow. It wasn't that I had done anything grand. I had simply changed the way I related to myself and to life, and life had responded in kind. I talked to Dolores about this one Saturday afternoon. We were sitting on a park bench, watching the children play. Dolores, do you think we attract what we feel? She looked at me with that smile of hers, full of understanding. Chica, I think we live according to what we believe to be true. If we believe we are invisible, we act as if we are invisible. and then the world treats us as such. But when we change what we believe, when we see ourselves differently, the world also changes the way it sees us. But how is that possible? Because we teach others how to treat us. By the way, we treat ourselves. By the boundaries we set. By the way, we position ourselves in the world. When you were desperate for their attention, you were saying, "I have no value without you." And they believed it. But when you started living as someone who has value, independent of them, they noticed. And it made sense. It made so much sense that it hurt. But it's not fair, I said, almost to myself. It's not fair that we have to change to be loved. No, Chica, you didn't change to be loved. You changed to love yourself. And then, as a consequence, people started to love you better because you taught them how to do it. I remained silent, letting those words sink in. Et toi être. I had treated myself as disposable for so long that everyone around me started treating me that way too. But when I stopped doing that, when I valued myself, when I put myself first, things changed. And it hadn't been selfishness, it had been survival. It had been self-love. That night, when I got home, I did something I'd never done before. I sat in front of my bedroom mirror and just looked at myself, really, without rushing. I looked at the wrinkles, the tired eyes, but I also looked at the strength that was there, at the history that face carried, at the battles won. And for the first time in a long time, I thought I was beautiful. Not magazine pretty, not advertising pretty, but truly beautiful. Beautiful in the way someone who has lived, who has survived, who is still here. I like you, I said to my reflection. And I got emotional saying it, because it was true. I had learned to like myself. In the following days, I continued living my life my way, going to craft meetings, to the reading group, going out with Celia, tending to my garden, and my children kept showing up. Not every day, not every week, but in a more present way, more genuine. Mariana took me to see her workplace. She was the manager of a clothing store. She proudly showed me everything and introduced me to her colleagues. "That's my mother," she would say, smiling, and I felt seen, recognized. There was a time when she took me to try on some clothes. She chose beautiful, colorful, modern pieces. "Mom, you need to dress up more. You're beautiful." I laughed awkwardly. "Oh, daughter, why?" "I'm old. Not old at all, Mom. You're 77 years old, but you have more energy than many young people out there. And beauty has no age." She convinced me to take to blouses and a pair of pants. And when I put those clothes on at home, looking at myself in the mirror, I felt different, more alive, more present. Junior started calling me more often, not to ask for anything, not to solve problems, just to talk, to see how I was doing. "Mom, how was your day?" And I would tell stories about the crafts, about the book I was reading, about Celia, about Dolores. And he was listening. "Really, you seem happy, Mother." "I'm happy, son, in a way I never imagined possible." "Teach me," he asked, half jokingly, half seriously. What? To be happy like this. Even after everything, I thought about it for a bit. "Son, I've learned that happiness isn't about having everything perfect. It's about accepting what is and still choosing to live well. It's about not depending on anyone to be whole. It's about being self-sufficient, but without closing yourself off. It's about loving, but without losing yourself." He remained silent on the other end of the line. "Thank you, Mom, and Roberto. Roberto became my walking partner. Every Saturday morning, he would show up here and we would go for a walk together in the square. We would talk about his life, about his work, about his fears, and I would listen and share mine too. The relationship had changed. It was no longer mother and children in the traditional sense. It was more equal, more horizontal, more genuine. One Saturday, we were sitting on a bench, resting after our walk, when he asked me, "Mom, are you resentful towards us?" I looked at him. "No, son, I don't have one. But we hurt you so much." Yes, it hurt, and I suffered a lot. But resentment is a burden I don't want to carry anymore. Resentment keeps us stuck in the past, and I want to live in the present. How can you be like that? I wasn't born this way. I became this way. Because I had to choose. Either I continued suffering for what wasn't, or I started living for what is. And I chose to live. He held my hand. "You're amazing." "Mom," I smiled. "I'm just a stubborn old woman who refused to die before my time." We laughed together. And I realized, every time I looked at this new dynamic, that it had only been possible because I had changed first. I had stopped playing the victim. I had stopped waiting for them to save me from my loneliness. I had taken responsibility for my own happiness. And that quickly, not to save m'arrive, but to walk alongside me. One afternoon, I was in the crafts group doing crochet when Nusa commented, "Chica, you've changed so much these past few months. When you first arrived here, you were so sad, so withdrawn. Now you shine." The others agreed. "That's true," Irene said. "You have a different light now." I felt embarrassed, but it really touched me. I had changed, inside and out. It wasn't just the new clothes, the styled hair, the more frequent smile. It was something deeper. It was an inner certainty, a peace that didn't depend on circumstance. You know what happened. I told them. I stopped waiting for life to give me permission to be happy. I gave myself that permission. Celia, who was next to me, squeezed my hand, and look what happened. Your children came back. You made friends. You're truly living. All because you changed on the inside first. Yes, I agreed. I spent my whole life thinking I needed to change people, change circumstances. But the only thing I needed to change was myself. And when I changed, everything changed with me. One night I was home alone, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I found myself thinking about everything I had lived through. The pain, the loneliness, the abandonment, but also the overcoming, the discovery, the rebirth, and then a strange feeling came over me. A feeling of gratitude, thankful for having gone through all that. Because if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't have changed. I would have remained dependent, needy, empty. But the peito famis, to rescue myself, and now I was a different person, more whole, stronger, more me. I didn't know that night that there was still a twist to come, a twist of fate that would test everything I had learned, and that would show me that sometimes life holds surprises that we could never, ever imagine. Because up until then, I thought I had learned everything. I thought I had reached the end of the journey. But I was wrong. The best was yet to come. And going from a play I could never have imagined. It was on a Tuesday morning that everything started to take a turn I never expected. I was in the phone making coffee when the phone resonant recognized. I don't usually answer calls from unknown numbers, but something made me answer this time. Hello? Good morning. Are you Francisca Oliveira da Silva? Yes, it's me. Who's speaking? My name is Dr. Enrique Montero. I am a lawyer. Could you receive me at your home today? Or would you prefer we meet at my office? It's about an important matter. My heart skipped a beat. Allow ya, an important matter. What happened? Are my children okay? Don't worry, Mrs. Francisca, it's nothing bad. On the contrary, but I need to speak with you in person. It's about an inheritance. Inheritance. I didn't know anyone who had died recently. It didn't make sense. Yes, you can come to my house. What time? I can be there at 10 o'clock. Is that okay? Serve. I hung up the phone and stood there, holding my coffee cup, trying to understand. Inheritance. Whose? I called Celia and told her. She was just as curious as I was. Chica, what if it's some distant relative you didn't even remember? But what relatives? Celia? I don't have anyone left. My family was small. My parents died a long time ago, my siblings too. It doesn't make sense. Then wait for the man to arrive and see what he has to say. Do you think it could be a scam? One of those things you see on television? Maybe, but the best thing to do is receive him and see. Be careful, Chica. Don't sign anything without reading it properly. I spent the whole morning nervous. I tidied the house, got myself ready, and baked a cake. I don't know why I baked a cake. I guess it was to distract myself. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door. I came across a tall gentleman in a dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He was about 60 years old, with grey hair and glasses. He had a serious demeanor, but a kind face. Mrs. Francisca, it's me. Please come in. He came in, looked around respectfully, and accepted the coffee I offered. We sat down in the room. He opened the folder and took out some documents. Monsieur Francisca, first of all, I need to confirm some information. You were born in 1948 in São Paulo, daughter of José Oliveira and Maria Aparecida. Yes, it's me. Did you live in the Jardim Europa neighborhood as a child? Did your mother work as a domestic worker? My heart started beating faster. How did he know that? Yes, but that was a long time ago. More than 60 years. He nodded, as if he already knew the answer. Monsieur Francisca, I've Mrs. Helena Marques de Albuquerque. There's some. I stopped the Helena Marques. Then me? No, Doctor. I don't know anyone by that name. He nodded, as if he had already expected that answer. Mrs. Helena passed away 3 months ago. She was 86 years old. She had no close family, no children, no living siblings. She left a letter and a will in which you are mentioned as the sole heir to all her assets. I just stared at him, completely confused. But how is that possible? I don't know this woman. There must be some mistake. There must be another Francisca Oliveira da Silva. There's no mistake, ma'am. All the information matches. Date of birth, parentage, address. And besides, he took an old photo from the folder and showed it to me. It was a faded black and white photograph. It showed a large, old kitchen. And there, sitting on a stool, was a little girl with braids, wearing an apron, covered in chocolate, laughing. EU. Première remembered. Suddenly, as if a door had opened in my memory. The kitchen, the smell of food. A kind woman teaching me how to make brigadeiro. My God, I whispered. Do you remember, ma'am? I remember a cook. I would go with my mother to work sometimes. And there was a woman in the kitchen who was very nice to me. She would give me cookies, let me help her cook. It was Mrs. Helena, he said gently. She never forgot Monsieur Francisca for you. He handed me a yellowed envelope with my name handwritten on it in shaky but neat handwriting. I picked up première lucadati you can open it. It's yours. I opened it slowly, carefully, as if that paper would disintegrate in my hands. Inside, there were 3 sheets of paper, handwritten in that same careful handwriting. I started reading. Dar France, if you are reading this letter, it is because I've already left, and the time has come for you to know the truth. My name is Helena, but you knew me by another name many years ago, when you were just a 9-year-old girl. You don't remember me, but I've never forgotten you. I was the cook at the house where your mother worked as a maid, there in the Jardim Europa neighborhood. You would go with her sometimes, when you didn't have school. You would sit on a little stool in the kitchen, watching me cook. You were such a quiet, polite, and kind girl. You never asked for anything. You never complained. You just stood there, watching me work, with those big eyes, full of curiosity. One day, you asked me if I could teach you how to make brigadeiro. Your voice was so soft, so shy, as if you were afraid of bothering me, and I taught you. I put you on a little stool so you could reach the stove. I held your little hand. While you stirred the pot, I let you lick the spoon. And you did it. So proud, you smeared your face with chocolate and laughed so hard. A carefree, happy laugh. I never had children, Francisca. I could never have them. The doctors said I couldn't get pregnant, and at the time, adoption wasn't common, especially for a single woman like me. So I buried that dream. I pretended it didn't hurt. I pretended it didn't matter. But at that moment, looking at you laughing, covered in chocolate, with that smile that lit up the whole kitchen, I felt something I had never felt before. A love so great it hurt in my chest, a mother's love. I saw you a few times after that, always quiet, always helping, your mother, always so tiny, carrying things that were too heavy for you. I wanted to protect you. I wanted to give you everything. I wanted to adopt you, take you home with me, give you a better life. But I was just a cook. I had no money, no position, and her mother needed her job. I couldn't do anything that would jeopardize that. So I only loved you from afar, in silence. Until one day, you didn't come back anymore. I later found out that your mother had gotten another job, closer to where you lived, and I never saw you again. But I never forgot you, Francisca. Never. Years passed. I continued working, saving money. I never married, never started a family. That emptiness remained there, inside me, until about 10 years ago, when I was already old, retired, and alone, I decided to look for you. I hired a private investigator. I gave him all the information I had, your name, your mother's name, the area where you lived, and he found you. She brought me a complete report. She told me that you had married, had 3 children, and had been widowed young. That you had worked your whole life as a domestic worker, like your mother, to support your children. You had well kept TD. That their children had grown up, studied, and gone on with their lives. That you were living alone now. I wanted to look for you so many times, Francisca, so many times. But I was scared. I was afraid you wouldn't remember me. Fear of seeming like a crazy old woman, showing up in your life out of nowhere, saying she's loved you for over 50 years. Fear of scaring you, of bothering you, of being a burden in your life. So I continued on from a distance. I asked the investigator to give me annual updates, to know if you were okay, if you needed anything, if you were healthy. And every year, on your birthday, I would light a candle, say a prayer, and send good energy your way, wherever you were. I know it sounds crazy. I know, you must be, reading this and thinking I was crazy. But I loved you, Francisca, in the only way I could, from afar, in silence, without expecting anything in return. Because that's what a mother's love is like. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need reciprocity. It simply exists. And now that I'm leaving, that my body can't take it anymore, that my days are numbered, I want to leave you everything I have. It's not a fortune. I'm not rich. But it's enough for you to live the rest of your life with dignity, in comfort, without having to worry. You didn't need to have suffered so much, Francisca. You don't have to have carried everything alone. You don't need to have gone through everything you went through. And I know that now it's too late to change the past. But it's not too late to change the future. Accept this not as charity, but as the gesture of someone who loved you in the way they could. Accept it as a gift from a mother you never knew you had. Accept it as the legacy of decades of silent love. Live well, my girl. Live lightly. Live happily. Enjoy every day you have left. Travel. Explore new places. Buy yourself nice things. Pamper yourself. Take care of yourself. Do all those things you've always wanted to do but never could. Because you deserve it, Francisca. You always deserved it. And if there is life after death, if there is a place where we can meet again, I will wait for you there. I'll be waiting for you with a pot of brigadeiro ready, a little stool for you to stand on, and all the time in the world to hear you laugh again. With all the love I've held for you my whole life, Helena, P.S. In the box stored in the bedroom closet, you'll find some photos. They're photos of you that I've collected over the years. I know it might seem strange, but it was my way of keeping you close to me, of feeling that, in some way, I was a part of your life. Forgive a sentimental old woman. When I finished reading, I was crying so much I could barely breathe. Dr. Henrique stood there quietly, respecting my moment. When I finally managed to compose myself a little, he continued, Monsieur, Helena left you an apartment in the city center, fully paid off. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in good condition. She also has some many thousand reais, which is deposited in a bank account that is already in your name. And she left some personal belongings, which are stored in the apartment. I couldn't process it. 230,000 reais. An apartment of a woman I barely remembered, but who had loved me my whole life from afar, without me knowing. The apartment is currently vacant, he continued, taking a bunch of keys from his briefcase. You can visit it whenever you like. Here are the keys and the documents. Everything in your name. Monsieur Francisca, everything's in order. Just signer. Here and here too, some documents. I signed it, still somewhat in a trance. He handed me the keys, gave me a folder with all the documents, and explained some bureaucratic details that I could barely pay attention to. And then he stood up. Monsieur Francisca, amidst of her life. She was a reserved, solitary woman, but she had an immense heart, and she spoke of you with so much love. It was as if you were the daughter she never had. She died peacefully, knowing that she had provided everything for you. That gave her peace. I couldn't speak. I could only cry. He shook my hand gently. Take good care of yourself, ma'am, and live this new phase of your life with joy. That's what Mrs. Helena would want. And he left. I sat there in the living room, holding that letter for hours. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the apartment. It was about having been loved without knowing, without asking, perhaps undeservedly. It was about having mattered to someone in such a profound way that this person had cherished that love for over 60 years. I called Celia. I could barely get a word in. She came running. When she arrived, I handed her the letter to read. She read it, and she cried with me. Chica. My God. Chica, I don't remember her very well. Celia, I was so little. But I remember that kitchen, the smell of food. A woman who was kind to me, who made me smile at a time when I didn't have much reason to smile, and she loved you her whole life. Her whole life. Chica, how is that possible? How can someone love like that? From afar, without ever saying anything, without ever asking for anything in return. A mother's love. Chica, true love. The kind that gives without expecting to receive. The kind that only wants to see the other person well, even from afar. We stayed there, hugging and crying together, for a long time. In the following days, I went to visit the apartment. It was located in an old but well-preserved building in the city center, 5th floor. No elevator, but I could climb the stairs at my leisure. I opened the door with trembling hands. The apartment was small but cozy. Living room, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom. Everything was clean, organized, and smelled of lavender. In the living room, there was some simple but nice furniture. A sofa, a bookcase with books, a coffee table. In the kitchen, everything was neatly arranged. Pots and pans hung up, spices neatly organized, just like the kitchen of someone who loved to cook. And in the room, in the bedroom closet, I found the box she had mentioned in the letter. It was an old shoebox, tied together with faded red string. I sat on the bed and opened it. Inside, photos, lots of photos, photos of me. I had the photo that Dr. Enrique had shown me of when I was 9 years old, in the kitchen, covered in chocolate. I had other photos from when I was a child that I didn't even know existed. Photos taken from a distance, a bit blurry, but it was me, at the school gate, in the playground, at the church door. I had photos of myself as an adult, married, with my husband, pregnant, with my young children. Photos taken from afar, always from afar, without my knowledge. I even had rehearsals from a bon méthode de faire. Me in the square, me at my front door. She had been a part of my life, my whole life, and I didn't know. I sat on the floor, crying, looking at those photos, and I felt such profound gratitude that I can't even explain it, because while I felt alone, forgotten, abandoned, someone was watching over me. Someone was rooting for me. Someone loved me. I have never been alone. Never. I just didn't know. At the bottom of the box, there was one more thing. A small notebook with a leather cover worn by time. Shelter. It was a diary. Helena's diary. She had entries spanning several years. She didn't write every day, but she would write from time to time. I started reading. March 15th, 1958. Today I met a little girl who touched my heart. She came with her mother, who has started working here at the house. The girl is small, thin, and quiet. She sat in the corner of the kitchen the whole time, without making a sound, without asking for anything, just watching me work. She has such sad eyes for such a small child. I wanted to hug her and tell her that everything is all right, but I'm nobody to her. I'm just the cook. April 22nd, 1958. The little girl came back today. She asked if I could teach her how to make Brigadeiro, a Brazilian chocolate fudge. Her little voice is so soft, so shy. I taught her, and she laughed so much. I don't remember the last time I felt so happy. Just seeing her happy. July 8th, 1958. The girl doesn't come anymore. Her mother got another job. Premier mystère. It feels like a piece of me has been taken with her. The entries skipped years. November 3rd, 1968. Today I turned 50. I'm alone, as always, but I don't feel lonely because I have the memory of that girl, and that warms my heart. February 17th, 2014. I hired an investigator to find the girl. I know, it's crazy. More than 50 years have passed. She probably doesn't even remember me, but I need to know if she's okay. I need to. March 5th, 2014. He found her. She's alive. She's 76 years old now. She's a widow. She has 3 children. She lives alone. She worked her whole life. The investigator brought me photos of her. She's aged, of course, but I recognized her eyes. The same eyes she had when she was little. Still sad. I cried so much looking at those photos. My girl. My little girl. August 20th, 2015. I've decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave everything to her. The apartment, the money I've saved my whole life, everything. She deserves it. She's always deserved it. I went to the lawyer today and got everything settled. When I'm gone, she receive everything. I hope this helps her. I hope this makes her life a little easier. December 10th, 2024. I'm sick. The doctor said it won't be long. I'm ready. I've lived my life. I've done what I could, and I left it all for her. My girl, my purest love. Mi truest lover and notre. Even if she never understands. Première levée d'air. And that's enough. It was the last entrance. 2 months before she died. I closed the notebook and held it against my chest, and I cried. I cried for her, who loved alone her whole life. I cried for myself, for I was loved without knowing it. I cried because of the tragic and beautiful beauty of that impossible love. In the following days, I told my children everything. They were impressed, moved, and happy for me. Then Mariana asked, "And what are you going to do with the money?" "Mom, with the apartment." And I realized something. They weren't asking out of genuine interest. They weren't asking with the intention of calculating how much they would get left over. They asked with genuine curiosity, wanting to learn a boomy life they had learned. They had finally learned. "I'm going to live," I replied. "I'm going to use this money to live. I'm going to renovate my house. I'm going to travel. I'm going to see places I've always wanted to see. I'm going to buy nice clothes. I'm going to the dentist to fix my teeth. I'm going to do everything I've never been able to do before. You deserve it." "Mom," Roberto said, "you deserve everything. And the apartment, I'm going to rent it out. The rent will give me a fixed income, security, so I don't have to depend on anyone. And whatever is left over," Junior added, "when you're no longer here, then we'll receive it. But while you're alive, you're in charge of your own life." I smiled. "You learned. It took us a while, Mom, but we learned. I decided not to sell my house. It had too much history, too many memories. It was where I had raised my children, where I had lived with my husband, where I had cried, where I had started over. But I completely renovated it. I repainted everything in bright, cheerful colors. I replaced the old furniture. I bought a new TV. I tidied up the garden, planted more flowers, and put a small table and chairs on the porch. I made my house a place that was a pleasure to live in. I rented the apartment, as I had planned, to a young couple who was starting out in life. Good, well-mannered people. The rent would give me a financial security I had never had before, and the money, the money. I set aside a portion of my money to live peacefully. So I wouldn't have to worry about the electricity bill, medicine, or food. So I could buy a gift for my grandchildren without having to count pennies. So I could go out with my friends without worrying about running out of money at the end of the month. I set aside another portion to fulfill dreams. Small dreams, but dreams that were mine. I went to the dentist and had a complete treatment. I fixed my teeth and got dentures where I needed them. And when I smiled in the mirror afterward, I felt like a different person. I bought some nice clothes. Not many, but a few. Pieces that made me feel good, beautiful, alive. Premier tout à triplane trip. I went to explore the northeastern coast with Celia. We stayed for a week in a simple but cozy little inn. We swam in the sea, ate fresh fish, and watched the sunset on the beach. And I felt free, light, alive, and another part of the money I decided to use in a way that I knew Helena would like. Together with Celia, Dolores, and other friends from the group, I created a small, informal project. We helped elderly, people who were in situations of abandonment and loneliness. He brought food, company, and paid for medicine when needed. He would sit down to talk, to listen. Sometimes, just his presence was enough. It wasn't anything grand. Itad no sing, no bureaucracy. It was pure love in action. And every time I helped someone, I felt like I was honoring Helena, that I was passing on the love she had given me. One afternoon I was sitting on my porch, watching the sunset, and such a great, profound clarity came over me that I had to stop and take a deep breath to process it. I had spent so much of my life asking, waiting, begging for love, thinking I was worthless, thinking I needed to prove I deserved to be loved. And when I stopped asking, when I loved myself first, when I valued myself, love came. It came from my children, who learned to see me for who I truly am. It came from my new friends, who welcomed me. It came from Helena, who loved me silently all her life. And it came from myself, as I finally learned to love myself too. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a consequence, a direct consequence of a change that began within me. I changed my inner state. I stopped seeing myself as a victim, as abandoned, as worthless. I started to see myself as someone who deserved it, who had value, who could be happy on my own. And life responded. He always answered. I just wasn't seeing it, because I was looking in the wrong place. I was looking outside, hoping someone would save me, someone would validate me, someone would tell me that I had value. When I looked inside myself and saved myself, when I validated myself, when I told myself that I had value, everything changed. Not overnight, not magically, but it changed consistently. Clearly, unequivocally, whenever I was in an internal state of neediness, despair, or victimization, life gave me more of the same back. But when I changed that state, when I found peace, self-love, dignity, life began to give that back to me. People changed. Opportunity flowed, and I finally understood a truth that I had heard so many times but had never truly grasped. Life is a mirror. It reflects back to us what we project. If we portray ourselves as victims, life treats us as victims. If we project ourselves with value, life treats us with value. It's not that the world is conspiring against us or in our favor. It's because we teach the world how to treat us. By the way, we treat each other because of the limits we set, based on how we position ourselves. And when we change that internally, the external world has no choice but to change as well. My children are a part of my life now. Truly, we have lunch together every Sunday. They call me during the week. They include me in their plans. They bring their grandchildren to visit me, but in a light, genuine way, without heaviness, without forced obligation, because they'm to the premier of me life, my projects, my independence. And that's exactly why, precisely because I don't need them, they want to be near me. It's funny how it works, isn't it? When we do ouïr assez vite. When we stop begging, we are sought after. When we feel complete, others want to be a part of our lives. It's not that I've become cold or distant, quite the opposite. I remain loving, I remain present, I remain a mother. But now I love myself too, and that changed everything. Today, I am 77 years old, and I can say, with complete certainty, with complete conviction, I am happy. Not because my life is perfect, not because I have everything I want, not because I don't have any more problems, but that's because I learned that happiness isn't out there. It egat et siner, and nobody can take that away from me. Nobody. Last night, I was organizing some old papers and found a photo of myself from about 10 years ago. I was smiling, but my eyes were empty, blank, dead inside. I grabbed my phone and took a selfie. I looked at the two photos, side by side. Even though I'm 10 years older, with more wrinkles, whiter hair, and a more tired body, my eyes were alive today, shining. Because I was truly alive, not just existing, but living. And that's something no one can take away from me. Helena gave me much more than money or an apartment. She gave me proof that I have always been loved, even when I didn't know. Even when I felt invisible. Someone saw me. Someone was rooting for me. Someone loved me. And it healed me in a way I didn't even know I needed healing. Because it wasn't just about being loved by my children. It was about understanding that I've always had value, that I always deserved love, that I was never invisible. I just thought that was it. And when I changed what I thought about myself, everything changed. One day, a few weeks ago, I was in the reading group and Dolores read an excerpt from a book. It said something like this: "We don't attract what we want. We attract what we are." And I thought, that's exactly it. When I was needy, desperate, and feeling victimized, I attracted more of the same. More abandonment, more rejection, more loneliness. But when I became whole, when I became worthy, when I became happy with myself, I started attracting that too. Whole people, healthy relationships, opportunities, true love. Not magically, but naturally, inevitably, because I had changed who I was, and life had responded accordingly. And today I know, with absolute certainty, life doesn't happen for me. Life responds to me, to what I envision, to what I believe. Au premier âme. If I want my life to change, I need to change first, from the inside out, always from the inside out. If this story touched you in any way, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. That way, you'll be notified whenever a new story like this is shared here. And if you feel like it, leave a comment. You can share if you've experienced something similar, what this story evoked in you, or even where you're watching from. Sometimes, writing a few words is the first step in realizing you're not alone.